let me begin now. Alan, first of all, can I thank you for being with us this morning, particularly as you happen to be on holiday. So thank you for that. But I'm going to get straight in to ask the questions, if I may. And the first question is, at the moment, regional trustees have a budget for their region or nation. Will there continue to be one budget for the region that the representatives share, or will each representative have their own budget? And there's a follow-up question to that is, would the geographical size of the region affect the size of the budget?
So at the moment, regional trustees have an amount of money that's allocated to them, but it's part of an overall regional trustees budget. And the reason it's kept as a single budget item is because it provides flexibility. So if one regional trustee needs to spend more than the initial money that was allocated in the budget, then that can be taken from elsewhere within that part of the budget. So each individual one doesn't specifically have an amount that they can't go over. The budget is allocated, or that figure is allocated broadly on the basis of number of U3As in each region. So the logic is that a trustee with more U3As would travel more, would attend more meetings, more conferences, more workshops and things like that. So that's the basis on which the budget is designed. In the future, I have to admit it's something that it was one of those points of detail we've not got round to yet. But what I would imagine is that there would still be a budget for that region, and it would be split between the two of them in whatever way the region thinks it's appropriate. So I would imagine that it would be almost business as usual. There would just be two council members operating within that budget rather than a single one.
But the budget itself is a central pot. It's not split up between the regions and nations particularly.
Yeah, so there is an amount that's allocated to each region, but it comes from a single budget pot for regional trustees, yes.
Okay, thanks for that. I hope that answers that question. Can I move on to the next one, please? Sure. There has been so much discussion about Fit for the Future proposals and the changes involved that for most members, we are getting lost in detail. Could we please see a simple organisational chart showing the structure of the u3a as it exists now and what it would look like if the proposals go ahead, so that we can clearly identify the difference between the two different structures?
Well, on the website, there's a sort of an organogram that shows how the overall movement is structured. It's not set down in hierarchical sort of branches and things like that. It's more here are the U3As, here are all the various support services. This is where the trust is as well, and it might be that we can do something with that and show how the council might play a role in all of that. But it's a bit like writing down the rules of cricket. You know, it's quite a simple game to play, but it's quite difficult to explain. And we don't have an organogram like a company has, where you've got a sort of CEO or a board at the top and then various departments responsible to it. The movement isn't designed like that. It's designed all around U3As with a trust facilitating. So I can probably suggest, yeah, we'll do what we can to produce something, but anything that you produce, people will put their own interpretations on it, that's all.
Okay, but we're going to try and do something.
I'll make a note of that and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the next question, I'm just going to read the question. There was quite a long preamble to it, but I'm conscious of the time limit, so I'm just going to go straight to the question. And the question is, have the board rejected the original Fit for the Future concept of a council with lead oversight of u3a operational issues? And if so, why? And if not, how can you, representing the board, convince us of your commitment to this?
Oh, crikey, I hope we haven't moved away from that. If we have, you know, we've lost the raison d'etre completely. The whole point is to try to create a platform for U3As to contribute a hell of a sight more than they do at the moment to the way the movement is run. And the principle of having a council that has an overarching responsibility for operational areas, and I put operational in quotes, because it's quite difficult to define operational issues, but all of those issues that are of interest to U3As, that's what the council, in my view, should be all about. I've written the vast majority of these sorts of words that are flying around, and I don't remember ever consciously moving away from that phrase. So yes, it's still central as far as I'm concerned. And if this goes through in October, I would really hope that people would recognise here is a major new innovation, something that will enable U3As to be much more comfortable about the way things are done in the future.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. I probably think I need to just see some of the preamble to this, because the individual who sent this says that they're fully supportive of the concept of the council and so on, but the AGM resolution appears to downgrade the council to a talking shop, a voice, while increasing the power to the board and the chief executive, or at least that's the view that they have. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that.
Well, I guess everybody will have their own interpretation of words. That's certainly never been my intention. I don't think anybody on the board has ever seen that as an intention. I mean, the vast majority of the board, as it stands at the moment, the regional trustees, if this goes through, would transition to the council. So they would be part of the council, and they would have a major influential role, largely in a similar way to what they have at the moment. But there'll be representatives, whereas on the board they're not representatives; they're trustees. So as far as what would be left would be the officers plus all of the new. I think it's 5 board members that we'd be looking to appoint or elect through the election system, and it's not about gathering power at the centre. It's certainly nothing about giving the CEO any greater powers or anything like that. What it's all about is, as I said earlier, is providing U3As with that opportunity to contribute a lot more than happens at the moment.
Right, thank you for that. I'll move on to the next question. I'm a new chairman and I wonder why we have to change. Is it all down to power struggle? I am only interested in providing a service to our members. Why do organisations get involved in politics? We are fine as we are, just serve our members.
Well, I hope that was politics with a small p. Certainly,
well, he did have a small p.
Certainly not involved in politics with a capital P. I think, we have to recognise that the Third Age Trust is both a company under the Companies Act, and it's the 13th or 14th largest member organisation in the country, and so it's a big thing. And inevitably, when you try and change anything within a big thing like that, there's lots of people who want to express an interest. And for those U3As who are not interested, my message has always been, this is not going to affect you. If you don't want it to affect you, carry on doing the things you want to do, no problem. You'll get support in the usual way from the trust. But the very fact that we've got, 78 people at the moment on this one, suggests that there's lots of people who do take a keen interest in what's happening outside their U3A. And whether that's network level, whether it's regional level, whether it's central level, board level, whatever level, they want to know what's happening and they want to understand why it's happening. And that's what we've been trying to do through the consultation program and through the putting out all the statements and clarifications and things like that. So I think it's inevitable that when you deal with a change that I think is potentially this radical, then it's going to attract interest. And the way we are, out of 400,000 members, some are going to get a bit hotter under the collar than others.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Next question. If the resolution is passed, how quickly will the changes start to be implemented? Bearing in mind, April 2025 is penciled in as the start date.
Yeah, so I think everybody on the board and in the office, I think are looking at what's going to happen after the AGM with obviously a certain amount of trepidation. If this goes through, then it will be all hands to the pump, and this will be the principal focus of action from literally from the AGM onwards. So what we'll be wanting to do is get out the invitations for nominations for candidates for the board and also for the council. And also for the council chair. And I think it's going to be a bit complicated, so we're going to have to work out how to keep it simple. It might be that we'll stagger the elections, perhaps 1 week at a time or something. It might be that we use different colours for different types of elections, so that people are clear what it is that the election, the nominations are all about. And then it'll be during November to December, I would imagine. At the moment, the plan is that if everything goes as we would hope, then we'll be inviting people to get themselves proposed, get themselves seconded by u3as, get their candidature in for whether it's for the board, whether it's for the council or for the council chair. And during December and January, recognising we've got a big holiday period in between there, I think we would be expecting a period of elections. And from January to the end of February, hopefully we'd be getting some clear indications of who the successful people are. At the moment, we're planning on a training period during the end of February, beginning of March, and the whole of this would be focused on trying to get the new board and the new council operating as soon as possible at the beginning of April.
So are you're reasonably confident that April 2025 is a realistic date for it then?
Well, we set out various timescales, and we know from past experience of elections, we know how long each one should take. We know how long to give to invite nominations. We know all of those sorts of things. So it's a fairly finite thing that you can set in advance various dates by which different things should happen. And so at the moment, those are the sort of tentative arrangements. I have to say, at the moment, my focus is on the AGM. So, at the moment, even though we are preparing for what would happen after the AGM for obvious reasons, because we have to, but at the moment, that my focus is up to the 16th of October.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll move on to the next question. Is there a plan for how to deal with an imbalance in the council if you had, for example, a full council for one area, but few or no nominations for other areas, which will mean that some regions may not be represented?
No, we don't have a plan, I have to admit. It's all about try again. The board has functioned for the last 12 months, I think, almost 12 months, without a London trustee. And that's because we keep going out asking for nominations for a London trustee, and one lady was prepared to stand about 12 months ago, but then after about 6 to 9 months realised that she had other things in her life that she needed to do, and so she had to step down. And since then, we've really struggled to get a London trustee. So I suspect the same might be the case with the council. But what I'd like to try and do between October and April is have a good marketing exercise that says this is a really important role. These are the sorts of roles that will take your movement forward. And so I think it's important that we try and encourage people to show an interest, to understand what's involved, and be prepared to put themselves forward. I think probably all of the people on this Ask Away today are people who at some stage have stepped forward and been prepared to take the chair, or been prepared to take a coordinator's role, or been prepared to take a trustee role somewhere. And I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to encourage people that if you want this movement to be successful in the future, here is a great opportunity for you to influence it and for you to be part of that success.
Thank you. I've got a related question, I think, and it says, knowing how difficult it is to get committee members and more importantly, regional trustees, am I right in thinking that if this resolution is passed, in order to set up the council and for it to run in the best interest of all u3as, we will need to find 2 councillors in each region, plus 1 member who would like to be nominated for the position of chair. But if they're not on the short list of 3 or elected as council chair, their service will not be required. I think that's drawing the point that it's difficult to get trustees at the moment. Will it be easier to get councillors?
Well, the other thing I'd like to say is the whole reason, or one of the reasons we're doing this is that the benefit will be that it will release the burden from a single individual in each region. It will share the burden. It will mean that people, some of the trustees don't have to work whatever it is 5 days a week at the moment. That they can share it with other people within the region, and that to me is a key point in all of this. And you know, I think we'll try and emphasize this in the sort of marketing and encouraging people to stand. Everybody's volunteers. Everybody in this screen, including me, is a volunteer. And we don't want to be working when we're on holiday. We don't want to be working endlessly at weekends and all the rest of it. It would be great if we could manage our time in such a way, but still be very effective. And so I'm hoping that future council members will have less onerous duties, less onerous time-consuming duties than the current trustees do.
Well, as a former trustee, I can relate to that. I can say the question does go on and say if someone is elected as chair from one of the regions or nations, surely they would favour their own region, as that's just human nature.
Well, the structure of appointing what we're suggesting in terms of appointing the chair of the council is that when people vote to or put people up for a position, that they should know what that position is. And if they're putting people up as a council member, then they're voting for them on the basis of a council member. But if people are going to be putting themselves forward as chair of the council, then it's important that chair is seen not to represent a particular region, and therefore is not been voted in by that particular region or the people in that particular region, but he's seeing himself or herself as an independent person, independent of the regions, independent of the board, but contributing in a way that the relationship with the board is being managed, that the communications of the council to the u3as and in the opposite direction as well are being managed effectively, and that they're bringing together all of the what will be conflicting views from u3as to try to produce a coordinated collective view. And that's going to be a really difficult task. And so you can't be seen to be favouring one region if you've got all that to do.
Okay, thank you very much there. The next question, quite a straightforward one. How do members get nominated for the council?
Well, there'll be an invitation for nominations going out after the AGM. So assuming this goes through, it'll be very similar to the invitation that there has been in the past for a board trustee. It'll set out the sort of basic requirements. The individual will need to be proposed and seconded by 2 u3as, one of which will need to be their home u3a, and then put that nomination forward. And within the region, if there's more than 2 people putting their names forward, then there'll be an election process. And that'll be an election process within that region that's very similar to the election process for the current regional trustees.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll move on to another question. This one is about the role of the chief executive. It says, we're getting answers via ask away, emails, etc., which we may like or may not like, but it does make things clearer. The elephant in the room now is the CEO role. There's no mention of it anywhere, and I hope it comes up on the 14th. Well, it has come up on the 14th. So if you'd like to comment on that, Alan.
Well, essentially, in terms of how the CEO works, there's no impact in these arrangements. This is not changing the way the CEO manages the staff, manages many of the delivery, the service delivery arrangements that they're set up to do within the staff. I guess the CEO, because as you know, we've got a new CEO starting at the end of September, beginning of October, Ian Cassidy. I've had some discussions with him already, but I think that CEO's role will be slightly broader than it was previously, because instead of the CEO sort of attending and dealing with just the board, I suspect the CEO will be attending and will be dealing with the council. So there'll be a sort of an extra layer of workload for the CEO. But other than that, the reason the CEO hasn't been mentioned in many of these the documents is because fundamentally their role will not change.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn now to some of the comments and questions in the chat. So I'll start with the very first one. As a new chair, I am still struggling with how the board and council communicate and as to why the board appoint the chair of the council.
So in the original draft terms of reference of the council, I think it's quite clear in there that whilst the council we're hoping will have a really meaty role in the oversight of what I'm keep trying to get away from is operational issues, but the ways in which the strategic aims are going to be met, then I think it's important that the council has a role that recognizes not just the aims that we want to achieve, but also the legal position as well. And the legal position is, and always has been and always will be, that the board is the ultimate decision-making body of any company or any charity. Now, what we're trying to do is relieve the board from the need to be dealing with certain things. And the certain things are all the things that we would hope the council would focus on in the future. And I can give you some examples of that if you want to in a second. But we have to recognise that the board continues to be the legally responsible body for the charity. And I think I've got the draft terms of reference in front of me, and I don't think these have changed at all. The key point is to make the council responsible for the oversight and influence in those areas of activity which directly impact on u3as and where u3as have a view that needs to be expressed and heard. But then there's an extra bit to the sentence that says, whilst recognising that the board is ultimately legally accountable for oversight of the movement. And so we can't get away from that. And that translates into the board is the body that makes the senior appointments, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the chair of Tattle, whether it's the chair of the finance or the governance committee. And in exactly the same way, the board needs to have the final say, as it were, on the appointment of the chair. Now, what we want to do is obviously try and make sure that u3as have a role in this and that the council has a role in this as well. So it's all about trying to meet these varying different interests, but recognising that at the end of the day, the board has the legal responsibility and discharges that through making various senior appointments.
I think there's a related question, which is the next one. It says, under the current Articles of Association for the Council, the board has no obligation to action any of the recommendations made by the Council. The board will also appoint the chair of the Council and has power to veto any nomination for Council members. There is therefore the danger that we lose our representation on the board for no benefit and indeed a loss to u3as.
I think, you know, this is a brand new thing. Nobody's done this in our movement previously. And so there's inevitably going to be an element of suck it and see. we want to set a framework in such a way that people on the council, including the council chair, can demonstrate their value to the movement in the future. And so the council has to operate in a way that it can demonstrate its value, not just to the board, but also to U3As as well. And that's partly why we're suggesting a review after 3 years, that we will need to demonstrate, the council will need to demonstrate its value. And so that value has to be demonstrated to the board as well. I would encourage anybody who takes part in the council in the future to recognise, we have an established structure within the movement, how things operate, and to a certain extent, we're looking to tinker with this by making some of these changes. I happen to think they're quite fundamental changes, but we have to demonstrate the value of these changes in the future, not just to the board, not just to the U3As, but to the board, to the council as well. So I think there's always going to be an element of, here is an opportunity. It's up to the council members to take that opportunity in the best possible way, and to demonstrate value.
Right, thank you very much. There is a note there that relation to the question that I asked on behalf of somebody regarding having charts to describe the structure of the organisation. Apparently the Chairs Forum has sent out a couple of charts showing the current and proposed structure, and somebody else adds on, yes, these charts are very helpful and they can't understand why you're reluctant to put down a chart.
Well, it might be nice if somebody sends it to me.
Right, okay, well, there's a related question there. How does the Trust see the Chairs Forum fitting into Fit for the Future? So what's the relationship between the Trust and the Chairs Forum, I guess?
I've no idea, to be honest. We keep asking for the opportunity to talk to the Chairs Forum, various board members or the CEO, and up to now, we've not had that opportunity. I don't know is the answer. We occasionally get correspondence from the Chairs Forum, some of which is very interesting and very helpful, and some of which, particularly on the Fit for the Future proposals, we've recognised is quite interesting comments, and we've taken on board quite a number of comments as well. But in terms of a relationship, I don't know. The Chairs Forum is not a democratically elected body as far as I'm aware, but I don't really know. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't really have a formal position, certainly not within the structure of the movement. But as always, networks, when networks are developed, are usually great for sharing opportunities and ideas, and I would always support that principle. Where it sits in terms of the Fit for the Future, I've no idea. We've not considered that, Neil. Okay,
but you've offered to actually participate with the Chairs Forum. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
We have a number of months ago. Both the chair, Liz Thackeray, and myself had done. I think even Sam Moger had also offered. And I offered again a few weeks ago when I became chair-elect, and I'm sure there will be an opportunity in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, why do the Trust need directors with specific skills when they have recently advertised in the February issue of Third Age Matters for members to form a governance committee?
Yeah, governance committee is sort of, again, I think a sort of a quasi-legal requirement for a charity of our size. We've got a really good governance committee at the moment that's got I think about 8 or 9 u3a members on it, including a couple of board members. So and that seems to operate quite well, looking at the various governance arrangements from a probity point of view, from making sure that anything that's being suggested, not just the Fit for the Future, but lots of other policies and things like that, that they fit within the correct governance framework and the legal framework. So that operates quite well in that context. But the board has the ultimate responsibility, or the trustees have the ultimate responsibility for certain governance matters. And even though they will seek advice from the governance committee, and that's why you need skills and experience on the governance committee, they'll seek advice from the governance committee, and they will make a decision. Hopefully, we will have people in the future who have skills and experience on the board who are able to ask good questions, sensible questions, scrutinize some of the proposals that might be coming forward from the governance committee. So the governance committee does the detail work, and if you ask the board to do the detail work, well, we'd still be here until middle of next week. So it's all about making sure that the people who are looking at the detail have skills and experience to do that, but the people who are on the board, the trustees, who are looking at the oversight of governance matters, also have enough experience to ask the right sort of questions and make the right sort of decisions. It's not simply a question of just taking a recommendation from the governance committee and saying, yes, rubber stamp and pass it through.
Okay, there are a few comments on there, but I'm going to focus on the questions. But everybody else here can read the chat as I can, I assume. So I'll just pick on the questions rather than the random comments. What percentage of members do you anticipate taking part in the council voting process? Of course, members in this context are actually u3a, isn't it?
Taking part in what? Which process?
Taking part in the council voting process.
Well, the u3as are going to be asked to elect people in their region. We normally have quite a decent turnout, as it were, of u3as in electing board trustees. And I would imagine it'd be a very similar turnout for council members. I would hope it might be a bit more. I would hope there'd be a bit more interest in who their council representative could and should be. But inevitably, not all u3as are always going to vote on these sorts of issues. So it's impossible for me to put a figure on it.
Okay, let me just have a look. What's the plan if the resolution is not passed at the AGM?
Well, there've been quite a few plan Bs floating around. I mean, we've not, the board has never developed a formal plan B. I think if it doesn't go through, I think there'll be a lot of disappointed people, particularly on the board, including myself. And I think they will want to not just consider what might be the options for the future, but consider their own position as well. We've all put a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of resources into promoting what we think is the right sort of future structure. And if it doesn't go through, then I think there will almost certainly be, immediately after the AGM, there'll be business as usual, in the sense that what we have at the moment will continue unchanged. But I think then there will be a minimum of 12 months before anyone gets round to thinking about what alternatives might be, developing those alternatives, going out to another consultation period of 3 or 4 months, then evaluating that consultation, then preparing all the alternative proposals in detail, and then coming back to a future AGM. My view, this has taken 2 years to develop up to now. My view is I think it would be a very challenging target to get alternative proposals sorted out within 1 month, within 1 year. And I'm certainly not sure that I would have the continuing energy to produce an alternative to these proposals and put all of the same time, resources, and emotion into an alternative that we've been doing. All of the board have been doing up to now.
Okay, again, there are a few comments, but I'm just going to focus on the questions. For a constitutional change like this, what would be the minimum participation for the vote to be counted as valid?
So the official position is that for any special resolution, in order for it to be passed, 75% of the votes being cast at the AGM need to be in favour. And that's, as you know, some U3As have 1 vote, some U3As have 2, 3, 4, 5 votes, and I think a couple of them even have 6 votes, the largest ones. 75% is the barrier, and that is a very, very high barrier. Don't get me wrong, and it has to be set high because it's such an important constitutional change to the articles. 75% is a high bar, but it's 75% of the AGM quorum. So whatever the AGM quorum is, sorry, it's a 75% successful vote once the AGM is determined as quorum. Now, all of our AGMs, as far as I'm aware, have always been quorate, and I can't remember what the figure is. Perhaps it might be something like 30% or something. So the AGM will almost certainly be quorate, and so the bar will be set at 75% of those voting. So it's in all of our interests for as many people, many U3As to register and to vote as possible. I would hope that they vote in favour, because we see this as a good opportunity for them. And but if it doesn't go through, you know, as I say, we will revert to business as usual, and somebody somewhere along the line will have to start thinking about alternatives.
Thank you. Can you give an example of what sort of issue would benefit from being dealt with better by a new structure?
Yes. So in the terms of reference for the council that's on the website, there was a list of, I don't know, I think about 12 or 14 different areas, subject areas, that we thought might be better dealt with by the council than previously dealt with by the board. So they're things like events, things like the how to deal with the 500,000 AGM resolution from last year, things like influencing social change. That's a good example. Influencing social change, or some people would call it campaigning. I wouldn't. I'd call it influencing social change. But some people believe that the u3a movement should be exercising a voice in things that are relevant to us, how older people are perceived, and all of those sorts of things. Lots of people in the movement are dead against it, and everybody recognizes that. This, you know, it's a Marmite case. Some people are in favor, some people are against it. So a council would be an ideal platform to make a decision about whether influencing social change is the sensible thing to be doing or not. Should we be exercising a voice, and how would we create that voice? Is it possible in an organization of 400,000 to identify messages, to identify overall directions for influencing social change? And a council would be much better suited to make that sort of decision, whether to go forward or whether not to, than the board. So there's a good example to me. Different models for U3As. There's been some talk previously about, you know, why do we have lots and lots of very small, vulnerable, fragile U3As who are really struggling all the time to get new members, get people onto their committees, get people with the relevant skills and experience to operate as a U3A treasurer, all of those sorts of things. And some of that discussion's taken place at the board. And in my view, there's a perfect example for the council to be making decisions about what the future models of U3As could be. Would it be sensible for some small U3As to club together and have a more coordinated approach? Would it be sensible for, as some regions operate as charities in their own rights? And there are different ways in which the movement could be structured locally, and it would be ideal for the council to consider those sorts of things. Grants policy is another one. Grants policy is a good example where the board has a decision to make about the overall amount of money, but it tries to make decisions about, well, what type of u3as would benefit from these, and how could we allocate money for this purpose and that purpose. And to me, that's not an area that the board could and needs to be involved in. It's a perfect opportunity for me, for the council, to discuss and decide how the money might be spent much better than it is at the moment. The grants that are made to u3a, we always underspend the budget, always, because very few u3as tend to come forward and take advantage of the grants that are available. And I could go on. As I say, there's a list in the terms of reference where I think the council could be really, really influential in the future. And at the moment, I think to some extent, and I don't want to denigrate my colleagues on the board, but to some extent, I think the board makes a bit of a pig's dinner of it. We tend to talk round and round these sorts of issues, whereas I think they're quite meaty issues for the council.
Thank you very much for that. Someone's made a comment. The movement is already successful. Why does Allan think it isn't?
I think the movement as a whole is very successful. I think it's not as successful as it was, and I don't think it's changing as much as it needs to change as society changes. Society changes, technology changes, lots and lots of things change. We've got some huge competitors out there that are taking our members, that are taking our audience away. In some cases, because they're producing delivering and offering a better product than we're offering in terms of u3a movement. So I think, yes, some of it's really successful, some of it's less successful. I get emails from u3as who are really, really struggling. And so that's not a sign of success to me. I think we need to make sure that the vast majority of our u3as are self-sustaining and successful, and many of them aren't. We've got some huge success stories. We know we have, and that's great to hear about the big u3as who are doing great things. But I wouldn't argue that the whole of the movement is successful.
Someone's not really asked it as a question, but I'll pick it up anyway. They say, I'm struggling to see how the council advised the board.
Well, I'm hoping the council will be able to make decisions in lots of areas. So it won't be a question of advising the board in some areas. I think there'll be areas where the board will look to the council for some advice. I think there will certainly be areas where the board will look to the council to make decisions and get on with it and deal with things. So I think it'll be very much a two-way traffic between the board and the council. But in general, I'm hoping that we can be quite clear about the boundaries. We can be quite clear about the responsibilities, and make sure that the board holds the council accountable for certain things, and then it's up to the council to decide how the best way of delivering those is. There's a paper about, or there's in the terms of reference, there's a lot of words about contributing to the annual plan. And once the annual plan is approved and signed off by the board, there's lots and lots of actions within that plan that need to be done. Some of it is clearly the responsibility of the staff. Some of it will clearly be the responsibility of the council if this goes through. And the council will look to how best to discharge those responsibilities through things like these strategic implementation groups of u3as who hopefully will have great ideas about how to do things in the future to improve the way things are done. Could I just say something as well that's come to mind about the previous question? Things are clearly not perfect, because we get a lot of complaints from u3as and from individuals saying that their voice is not being heard. And so if everything was hunky-dory, I don't think I'd be getting those emails, but I am. And this is one way of responding to those sorts of those criticisms.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious that I've got 36 messages which I haven't got to yet, so I'm only concentrated on questions. But I did just want to pick up on one comment, which was to do with the relationship of the Chairs Forum. There's a note here, Alan, that says the board will receive notes of the Chairs Forum later today. Right, let me just move on to see. Next question. Alan, when you mentioned charity, what are you actually referring to?
You mean as an organisation, the charity
Well,
organisation?
presumably that when you've used the words charity in some of your responses.
So the movement is made up of whatever it is, 1,035 individual charities called u3as. There is also a coordinating body, an umbrella body called the Third Age Trust, which in itself is a charity and also is a company. And so the Third Age Trust has to operate within legal charity conditions, but also legal company conditions. All the u3as have to operate within charity conditions.
Okay, fine. Now, there's a comment which has led to a question. Legal accountability is not the same as delegated decision-making authority. And the question, the view was the question wasn't answered. The same fact about the legal responsibility of the board was reiterated several times with no reference to the chair of the council. So I think there seems to be still some uncertainty here about the responsibilities and powers of the council.
Well, read the terms of reference that are on the website for the council. I mean that sets out the accountabilities. It sets out the potential relationship with the board, and you know, I can sit here for the next couple of hours talking about that particular issue. But you know, we've tried our best to set things out as clear as we believe they need to be at this stage. Recognizing that this is brand new. We're never going to be able to set down cross every I, every T and dot every I at this stage, because we genuinely don't know. A lot will be up to the future council members and the future board members to make this structure work.
Okay. In the proposed new articles of association, why will the board have to approve nominations for election to the board, in effect choosing who they would like to join them in the future?
So this is a nominations group. So we've talked, when we went out to consultation, we said we need to try to get a position where the new board members have got the ability to ask the right questions, deal with the right sort of information, that when they're presented with a lot of finance schedules, that they have the ability to know what those are all about, what the messages are, and how to work within that type of schedule, to when they get complex legal arguments, that they've got the ability to understand not necessarily the detail of all of that legal argument, but enough background experience and understanding to be able to ask the right sort of questions, so that when they make a decision at the end of the day, they're comfortable that that decision is the right decision. And I have to say, at the moment, and again, no disrespect to my colleagues on the board, and I know there's a couple of them on the screen today, but for quite a few trustees, and sometimes myself included, when things are floating through, you can see the eyes glaze over a bit, and that's no good. To be, when you're a board trustee with that level of legal responsibility, you need enough background to be able to understand what it is that you're looking and make sensible judgments. And so in order to do that, when we go out for nominations for the new board members, we'll set out a range of skills and experience that we would expect board members to have. And then when nominations come in, we would expect those people to set out a sort of a mini CV in a way that meets those skills and experience. And the purpose of having a nominations committee is to review those nominations to make sure that people have what they say they have. And so that they are the right sort of people to be operating at board level. And that's all they'll do. They'll match the individual CV with the requirements that were set out in the original role description. And then that'll go to the board. And I would imagine that 99.99% of those people are going to be able to demonstrate what they say, the experience that they've got. And then it'll be for the board to kickstart the election. So it's not a filter in the sense of filtering out people that the board don't like. It's a filter in terms of making sure that people have what they say they have. That's all.
Right, thank you. Next question is, has the Trust considered how to measure the outcome of the potential changes in the future? Anecdotal evidence is very flawed, so proper measurement is required, at least by this U3A. I guess, do you know how success will look? What will success look like?
Well,
How are you going to measure it?
Well, it's a question that I guess in 3 years' time or whenever, the board will be asking, first of all, the council, secondly, all the U3As, about how they perceive the value that the council and new board arrangement is delivering. We did something similar for the consultation process last January to April, and produced quite a fairly lengthy report that looked at it from lots of different points of view. The comments that were on social media, the comments that came back from U3As in a survey, and views of the council members themselves and how the pilot council members. So you try and create as much, as it were, analytical evaluation as you can do. But I must admit, I've not thought about 3 years from now yet. What I'm thinking about is 16th of October and what happens after that.
Okay, there's a few comments that, Alan, you probably would want to read later. I know we're going to keep a copy of all the chats so you can read them, but I'm just focusing on the questions. Is the strategic intention of the proposals to make u3a a more bottom-up organisation?
I always shy away from any definition that says bottom up or top down, because it depends which way you hold the organisation chart. This is a member organisation. It's defined as a member organisation. All the processes that we have are democratic processes designed to make sure that the members have a huge influence wherever within there. Everybody, other than the staff, everybody is a U3A member. We have all sort of served time in our local U3As doing this, doing that, on all the interest groups, on all the sitting on the committees, sitting on networks, sitting on regional bodies. So the whole point is that this is a democratic member organisation. So it's impossible to say that members don't have an influence over what happens. Of course they do. Because that's the way the structure is set up. The CEO reports to the board. The board is made up of U3A members. So it's the way the organisation is set up that I just think it's impossible to argue that it's not a member influence, member driven organisation.
Okay, somebody's sort of re-asked the question before about the level of participation rather than the percentage of votes cast. My understanding is there isn't a minimum level of participation required, other than the quorum of the
quorum for the AGM.
So what's the quorum of the AGM?
I don't know. You've tested me there, Neil. I don't know. We'll put a note out. In my head, I've got a figure of 30%, but I don't know. It might be less than that. I haven't got the Articles of Association, and I'm not going to take the time to read them, I don't think, at the moment, to find out.
Right. Okay. There's quite a lot of comments about the role of the Chairs Forum, and I'm sure you'll read those and get back on those later. But at the AGM, can those U3As with multiple votes split their vote to reflect the views of their members, and do all their votes have to be cast for or against?
So when in the older days, pre-COVID, was it BC, before COVID, when delegates used to attend the AGM, they had cards, and I never went. I must admit, I don't remember, but I'm told they had cards and they held cards up to vote, and I understood at that stage that they could split their vote. So if somebody had 4 votes, they could sort of hold 2 cards up for one issue and another 2 cards up for something else. But after COVID, when everything went electronic, and it went online and the voting was done online, then I don't know, I wasn't party to it, but I believe that the system now is that if a u3a has 4 votes, then it votes once, but that once of voting counts as 4.
Right, thank you. Question, what will happen if the council and the movement don't engage? Will we just carry on as we are at present?
Well, I think I answered that earlier. Yeah,
you did. I think you did.
You know, we'll just continue as we are, and somebody will have the task of thinking whether to come up with something new in the future. But I think if we do continue as we are, we'll continue with all the weaknesses we have at the moment. We'll certainly have vacancies on the board, which I don't think will be helpful. Trustees will still be overworked. I think u3as will still complain that they don't have a voice and they don't have an influence on the way things are done.
Okay, next question. We are adding a layer. Are we adding a layer of bureaucracy because we are losing members to other organisations that are answering the needs better?
Well, I don't think the 2 bits sit together there. We're certainly losing members in the sense that outfits like Restless, even though they're commercial organisations, are encroaching on the sort of area that we have traditionally drawn our audience, our membership from. And how much that contributes to either member loss or lack of increase of membership, I can't tell you. We've never done a study on that, but we do know from anecdotal evidence that people have joined and are happy to join some of our competitors.
Yeah, the question actually continued into a second part. Are we acting as a not-for-profit organisation seeking to help people, or a commercial competition against Age UK and others?
I think that the two will always run together. If we want to be a successful organisation, we have to know what the competition is doing and know whether we can learn from the competition. But yes, we are trying to provide the object clause in all u3as and in the Third Age Trust is quite clear that we have an object clause that promotes learning. And whether you regard that as a social service or not, that's a different matter.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm conscious of the time. We are just about at 11 o'clock now. My apologies.
Neil, there was one question that I noticed floating through in the governor's one, which I don't think you've asked.
Oh, did I miss it? Yeah.
It was about federated charities.
Yeah.
And the question, I think, was something to the effect of a federated charity suggests a strong control from the centre. And are we a federated charity in that sense? And I would argue, I don't think I've ever used the term federated charity, but if I have, I apologise. But federations come in all shapes and sizes, and they are principally where lots of different independent charities come together in a common cause, and there is some form of coordinating, consulting, facilitating, and in some cases controlling centre. But there's lots of different styles, different types. We are not an organisation where control is being exercised from the centre. That's never been the intention in the u3a movement, and nothing in the Fit for the Future is intended to introduce that at all.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we discussed that one last meeting as well, didn't we? I'm not sure, but anyway, right. It is now gone 11 o'clock. If your question hasn't been reached and hasn't been answered, it will do. We'll take a copy of all the chat, and we will get back to you with. Well, Alan will get back to you with all that. I hope you found it useful and helpful, and thank you very much for your participation and attendance today.
And perhaps we can carry some of the questions over to the next one on the 11th of September.
Indeed.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you, everybody. Cheerio.